He remembers Andrew turning up one day with a tall blonde actress, acting like a complete idiot, trying to be flirtatious. When the prince saw a frog on the ground, he turned to the female guest and said, "Oh, don't go kissing that frog, dear. We don't want any more princes running around here." He started maniacally laughing at his own crude joke. The Gillies' feelings were clear. I saw him multiple times throughout that 3 months, and he was just an obnoxious wanker. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Tia Denise. We are going to finish entitled today. I'm not going to do a long intro, as I've said many times. If you've gotten to this point, you're in it to win it. But I would just say, just to remind you, last episode was a catalog, really, of Andrew's social ineptitude. He is incredibly rude and crass. He makes people feel very awkward. He's also just wildly selfish, which of course we knew, but one of the last stories that we read last week was about him hitting a policeman, wrecking the guy's arm, and then the policeman was unable to get any kind of proper compensation or at least an apology from the palace about his injuries. Andrew was never held to account. It was just like, well, go get your arm fixed at hospital and, peace be with you. I mean, it was like unbelievable story after unbelievable story of Andrew's wild selfishness, and then everybody just having to kind of pick up the pieces and hobble on, and he just is roaring off into the sunset. So we got more of those stories today, but also we've got some stuff about Sarah Ferguson as well, because she's no bed of roses. So let's keep going. This chapter is entitled, "Well, why can't they divert that train to Birmingham?" Playing in an exhibition match at the Belfry, the home of the PGA, in 1998, Andrew earned £30,000 for the Golf Foundation for a skillful drive on the difficult 10th hole, but then spoiled his feet on the next hole, where he hooked his drive into a bunker on the left of the fairway. According to one observer, he marched into the bunker, took a quick look at his ball, didn't fancy the lie, picked it up, and threw it sideways into a better one. Such an act called for at least 1 or possibly 2 strokes penalty. But nobody said anything, and no one wanted to call out the Queen's second son, least of all the rules official. "In the space of 2 holes," said the observer, to many in the crowd who witnessed this brazen cheat, Prince Andrew went from hero to zero. The golf official has encountered Andrew several times. On one occasion, playing in a Golf Foundation Pro-Am, Andrew decided to call the club steward. The conversation with the steward, who did not know the identity of the caller, went something like this. Andrew: "Can you sort out a private room and a prawn salad?" Steward: "No, sir, we've got a big do on today." Andrew: "Don't you realize I'm Prince Andrew?" Steward: "Yes, sir, and I'm the Queen of Sheba." On another occasion, Andrew arrived late to a golf event in Buckinghamshire, and not in a good mood. He proceeded to charge along the line at a speed which was just short of being rude. He was then presented with a sheet of paper with the starting times for the following day. The Lord Lieutenant of Buck said a few words of welcome, but received no response from the Duke. Andrew began to read the paper he'd been given and continued to say nothing. The room was in absolute silence, and stayed that way for probably only several minutes, but it seemed like hours. It felt as if the whole room of middle-aged men had been paralyzed, said the source. Meanwhile, Andrew continued to read his A4 sheet of paper, on which I doubt he knew a single name. At the conclusion of his power play, he simply handed back the paper and suggested we go through for dinner. The comedian Katie Brand has a story from a friend of Andrew's who once had a lift in his chauffeured car with a police escort from Buckingham Palace to Canary Wharf. With all the traffic stopped, the journey took under 8 minutes. The friend asked Andrew if he felt embarrassed that everything had to stop for him. "Oh, no, people are very good about it. They don't seem to mind at all." A diplomat tasked with taking Andrew to various locations in Qatar remembers how, after spending a day together, Andrew then reintroduced himself to the diplomat at dinner. He clearly hadn't even looked at him once. One day, a train taking the Duke to Birmingham was cancelled, and he was told that he could wait in the VIP lounge for the hour until the next one departed. He was furious, venting his rage at his equerry Rupert Maitland Titterton. "Why can't they organize another train?" He flicked his hand and shouted, "That train over there, for example! Why can't they divert that train to Birmingham?" Another time, Andrew asked to have lunch with Boris Johnson when he was mayor of London, turning up with a list of things he wanted to talk about. Darren Johnson, a colleague of the mayor, remembered how the Duke wanted to redesign traffic lights with fewer of them with fewer red lights. He thought the whole of Battersea Power Station should be demolished and that incorporating the towers, though listed, was putting off developers. He felt the Queen Elizabeth Centre was too small and not fit for purpose. Boris Johnson responded, "Well, if it's too small, it's your mum's fault." Andrew responded by sticking his tongue out at Boris. It was the most bizarre meeting I ever had in my 16 years at City Hall. He hadn't been briefed, and they just seemed issues he'd picked up driving around London. After Andrew was escorted from the lunch, Boris turned to Darren Johnson. "I'm the last person to be Republican, but if I ever have to spend another lunch like that, I soon will be." After the Department of Trade and Industry decided that Andrew should become an ambassador for the British fashion industry, he was invited to a briefing by fashion editors at Vogue House. The Duke was in a gung-ho mood and suggested he ask them a question. Nicholas Coleridge recounts what happened. "If you were steering an 8,000-ton Daring-class destroyer into harbor, how far in advance of reaching port would you shut down the engine?" asked Andrew. "Now come on, ladies, don't be shy, I want you all to guess." You're here at Vogue House. We're here about fashion. Why are you trying to show off some random knowledge you have from back in your Navy days? Literally not of general interest. So what are you talking about, and why are you making all of us have to guess and play stupid games just so that you can, in the end, come up with the answer? If you want to let me know, then just tell me, hey, do you know that? Don't make me guess. I don't want to be part of this. It's stupid. The fashion editors all looked at each other in puzzlement. Eventually, editor Alexandra Schulman suggested 500 yards. Her fashion director, Lucinda Chambers, went with half a mile. Editorial director Anna Harvey, 1,000 yards. And Kate Reardon of rival magazine Vanity Fair suggested a mile. The answer was more than a mile, but time had run out and it was time for Andrew to leave. What a blessed waste of time. A soldier who was part of the Royal Guard at Balmoral in the late 90s for 3 months also assisted the Gillies. He remembers Andrew turning up one day with a tall blonde actress, acting like a complete idiot, trying to be flirtatious. When the prince saw a frog on the ground, he turned to the female guest and said, "Oh, don't go kissing that frog, dear. We don't want any more princes running around here." He started maniacally laughing at his own crude joke. The Gillies' feelings were clear. I saw him multiple times throughout that 3 months, and he was just an obnoxious wanker. Harry Beaufort, 12th Duke of Beaufort, was not much impressed by Prince Andrew, finding him dull, and appearing to assume that we were interested in the quantum mechanics of golf club design or detailed technical aspects of his work in the Navy. He peppered his heavy-handed attempts at humor, followed by guffaws of laughter, with some very bland stories about Mother. The wife of a former naval colleague remembered Andrew having basically few social skills. All he could talk about was how you could tell the difference between a real Rolex and a fake. "The fake ticks, the real one swishes." I'll never forget that, she recalled. She found Andrew cocky at times, yet insecure around ordinary people who were superior to him. An uncomplicated man whose mobile ringtone was once the theme to 24. Jack Bauer's a man of no boundaries, no limits. Andrew is awkward in company, finds it hard to relate to people, and has few friends. He rarely reads, preferring camera manuals or mindless videos such as Terminator. His ex-wife described him as an intellectual zombie. Boy, if Fergie can say that about you, you've really reached the bottom of the barrel. Apart from golf and making money, Andrew had a special fascination with special forces and the intelligence services. Author Ben McIntyre writes of how the Duke, at the height of the 1980 Iranian embassy siege, ordered his protection officer to contact siege police commander John Dello, saying that he would like to visit for lunch. According to McIntyre, the last thing Dello needed at this delicate moment was a princeling and his entourage in the building standing around asking questions and eating sandwiches. The young royal wished to be where the action was, and he was used to getting what he wanted. The request was refused, as were the repeated offers of his services to the head of MI5, Eliza Manningham Buller. She turned him down on the grounds that he was too high profile, but according to one witness, he wouldn't let it go and continued to write letters to her. Colin Burgess identified part of the problem. Andrew just carries on struggling, even now I think, to find his real identity and his role in life. He's not going to inherit the crown, and the combination of that and being a middle child has made him a bit whiny and temperamental. To say it mildly. It's made him a bit whiny and temperamental. Talk about the understatement of the year. Okay, but what's going on with Sarah? It's clear which role his ex-wife is proud of. Interviewed in 2011, Sarah told Harper's Bazaar, "The only thing I know I've done 100% right is to be a good mother. I'm proud to say I'm the best mom I know. People say to me, 'What's your brand identity?' And I say, 'I'm a global mother.'" It's a mantra she's repeated throughout her life. In Finding Sarah, published that year, she listed some of her qualities. "I am smart. I'm special and unique. Very sensitive, loving, caring, and so funny. I discovered, too, that the best job I've ever done was as a mother." How did anyone get through Finding Sarah if that's a legit passage? By the way, so funny is not me exaggerating. It's literally SOOO. How do you write about yourself as so funny? How do you say, "I'm smart, I'm special and unique, very sensitive, loving, caring, so funny. I discovered I'm an awesome mom"? Like, I know that she has to compensate for the fact that everyone's always criticizing her, so she has to show, you guys can't, put me down. I know who I am. We've got to have that whole thing. But, maybe just don't write a book. Maybe just go out and do. Instead of writing this entire lengthy diatribe about how you're the most awesome person anyone could hope to know. But the crazy thing is she went on to write 2 more books about herself. How could a person keep talking about themselves? How could you still have so much to say about your own self? I don't even get it. Anyway, the crazy thing is that she would say that she's such a good mother. I'm sorry, we started this book out with a story about how she let her naked baby girl sit on the knee of her lover, who was totally fine, having an affair with Sarah while she was pregnant with the second child. I mean, it's like, who were these men that her daughter was around? She literally had Epstein around her daughters. And you guys, as I am reading Nobody's Girl by Virginia Giuffre, I am truly sickened. I could hardly fall asleep last night. I was just so overwhelmed with sadness for Virginia. And just the absolute sickness of Epstein. I don't even think that I had even comprehended. I had not allowed myself to really know. But I do know, and Andrew knows, and he knew what kind of guy he was bringing around his daughters. And to me, there's just zero chance that Beatrice and Eugenie have been left with nobody ever bothering them, ever. How could you have your parents running in circles with these chronic molesters and you just kind of got out unscathed? Meanwhile, your mother is letting you wander around naked with men who are having affairs with the mom. Obviously, his moral compass is in great decline. And I'm not saying that made him an abuser of children, but what I'm saying is the willy-nilly kind of whatever, we're all just having a good time, I'm going to look the other way behavior of Sarah makes me feel like those kids could have been easily hurt by any of these sort of strangers coming in and out of the house trying to take advantage of association with Andrew and Sarah. It just makes me feel, and this is a complete alleged, but it just makes me feel like Sarah's the kind of mom who would just kind of happen to just not notice. If something just kind of didn't sit right with her, or she saw something that any other mom would think, holy hell, what's going on here? I just feel like Sarah would just cross our fingers and Philly D, I'll sort that tomorrow. I hope that nothing bad happened to the girls, but of course I just love them so much that, my love will conquer all. She seems like an absentee mother, as we'll go on to read, but just the characters that they're bringing around their girls with full knowledge of who these people were and how they were functioning just makes me wonder, what stories do Beatrice and Eugenie have? Are they okay? The book goes on to say that there's no disputing the pride both parents take in Beatrice and Eugenie, but the fact that Sarah continues to make the claim about being such a good parent does not mean it is necessarily true. Visitors noticed that the Duchess had such trouble controlling her daughters when they were young that she would hand them over to a nanny unless photographers were present. Even the protection officers remarked that the girls' behavior tended to be awful when around their mother. Whenever Hello Magazine arrived for one of those 6-figure photo shoots, it was completely staged from beginning to end, with nannies hovering to take over the children after each shot. On arrival at public functions, the Duchess would grab the children's hands while smiling for the camera and then pass them back to their nanny once safely out of view. Marlborough parents were surprised how rarely the Yorks attended the school when Eugenie was there. "It's keen for parents to attend events whenever they can," said one. "I can't remember the last time I saw either the Duke or the Duchess." Many of us parents have talked about it, especially after we read that she had got that Mother of the Year award, and to be frank, we find it rather odd. Perhaps we just miss them, or perhaps it's a question of security. And they do both do a lot of traveling, of course. Motherhood is central to Sarah's sense of identity because, as she has often claimed, she did not have an attentive mother herself. This sense of abandonment is at the center of her personality and goes some way to explain her need to please, her extravagance, and her insecurities. Piers Morgan, after lunching with her, found her absolutely exhausting company, a whirlwind of energy, tormented emotion, and quite painful and obvious vulnerability, adding, "She lives her life at a frantic pace, racing round in a terrible hurry without, it seems to me, knowing where she's hurrying to." Julia Llewellyn-Smith, profiling her, felt that there were two Fergies. One is no longer a people-pleaser, who snaps at you and regards you coldly. But when she calms down, another Fergie emerges, the skittish, smiling, English eccentric that we all love. The thin line between the two is unnerving. Michael Usher, after Sarah walked out of his 2011 interview with her on 60 Minutes, was struck that throughout she had insisted on being addressed as Duchess, but also that she behaved afterwards as if there had never been any sharp words, asking about his children and offering to sign books for them. Ross Benson, writing about her in the Daily Mail, thought her a mass of contradictions. She could be warm and engaging, but just as quickly cold and imperious. And she demanded loyalty, all too often of the one-way variety. And should anyone dare to question her behavior, she's liable to turn nasty. Alan Starkey noticed her staff struggling to cope with her, especially as she found it hard to find the right balance with them, confiding far too much when she treated them as friends, and compensating far too angrily when she remembered that they were servants. During the divorce proceedings, she gained the moniker Fruitcake Fergie, given her irrational behavior, the claim to hear voices, her reliance on colonic irrigation, hypnosis, acupuncture, and various psychics and shrinks. But throughout her life, she's been searching for purpose. Part of this comes from her charity work. No one disputes her genuine feeling for the deprived and the vulnerable, and how it gives her a sense of spiritual fulfillment. Sarah's childhood worries about being overweight and the absence of a strong mother figure led to low self-esteem, insecurity, an excessive need for approval, and an eagerness to please. It also led to alternative medicine, cafe society, and ostentatious spending. She was constantly seeking the love that had been missing in her childhood, constantly falling out with friends, especially those providing truthful advice. Part of that led to her to behave like a child. Frances Hardy felt that this was perhaps the essence of Sarah. To be childlike is to be released from the obligation to conform to adult expectations and conventions. As Sarah told her, "When I got married, people said, 'You mustn't make faces when you go out. You mustn't do this or that.' But I wanted to be myself. I'm 59, but I feel about 8 years old." I've always found her a sympathetic figure, with her mad, bulging blue eyes and appalling taste in men, business partners, and just about everything, said journalist Tina Brown, who also pointed out her instinctive friendliness and admired the way that she ate the indignity of having to become an ambassador for Weight Watchers to pay her bills. But Brown also landed on Ferguson's vulnerability. Fergie has always concealed her fragility under the guise of being a raucous good sport. Because she wasn't thin or blonde or the daughter of an earl, her instability was never glamorous like Diana's. It manifested itself as exhibitionism. Alongside this, the Duchess is big-hearted, full of energy, enthusiastic, exuberant, boisterous, and generous. At one point, she had 450 people on a birthday gift list. Her personal trainer and close friend, Josh Salzman, remembers her renting and paying for a 3-bedroom house for him after his wife left him to raise 5 children alone. The television producer Nick Bullen has worked with Sarah many times and believes she has a good heart. She genuinely cares for people, but is desperate for people to like her and will do anything to please them. She also has the fault of listening to the last person who spoke to her. Nick Durden-Smith, who has known Sarah since she was employed by him 40 years ago and worked alongside her at the Motor Neuron Disease Association, said, "She's always been a very generous person, a person who acts on impulse." He admired the way she had raised tens of thousands of pounds for charities, calling her a marvelous president of the MNDA. She went to see umpteen people, families, one of whom had the disease, father and mother normally, and she would send the whole family off on a holiday to somewhere like Bermuda and pay for it. We're talking about 6 or 7 people, and pay for it because the father or the mother was actually dying, and this was the last holiday for the family. Durden-Smith also visited hospitals with her as part of Children in Crisis and described her going around and talking to the children, holding their hands, asking after them, sharing about her own daughters. She has this wonderful way of getting into a child's mind, if you like, a child's psyche, and she'll talk about the things that Beatrice and Eugenie do, naughty things, and she'll have children laughing who are desperately ill. I've seen her do that on many, many occasions. Theo Ellert was still very, very fond of Fergie now, despite all that we've been through. She's tremendous fun. She lives life to the full. She likes doing things to make people laugh. She likes doing things to shock people. But on the other hand, she really revels in doing things that do make people happy, particularly if people are underprivileged or ill. Eller believed Sarah has a genuine gift for disabled, particularly mentally disabled youngsters, and remembered in particular a visit to a home in Split with Bosnian refugees who had just been left in a gym with their own excrement all over the floor. Despite the powers that be not wanting her to go inside the gym and warnings from Ellert, Sarah just walked straight in. The youngsters rushed up to her, clawing at her. They were pulling at her hair, yet within a few minutes, she'd got them. She was on the floor with them, holding their hands eye to eye, soul to soul. They were calm, they were loving her, and she was loving it. The journalist Judy Wade was also there and confirmed Sarah's gift for connecting with the disadvantaged. She too remembered the stench in the feral children. They were very hostile, very nervous, very upset, and some of them spat at her. They hit her, and she just carried on. She just reached out to them, touched their faces, held their hands, and talked very soothingly to them. Anna Lubienska accompanied Sarah on one of the trips to Poland and said Ferguson used her contacts to fundraise for the Children's Leukemia Hospital and brought a teddy bear for every child. She was hands-on, mucking in, and behaved like a mother hugging the children. Lubienska said that she appeared genuine and made no attempt to capitalize on the trip. The Duchess of York excites very contrary opinions. In a profile in June 2024, the enduring ghastliness of Sarah Ferguson, after she claimed to be an ambassador for Generation Z, Julie Burchill declared that Sarah had seen her elevation to the monarchy not as a privilege which brought duties, but as a sure way to grab a never-ending smorgasbord of luxe freebies. Would Ferguson admit to being lazy, greedy, plagiaristic, grifting, and seeking fame by association? Asked Burchill, noting she still used her HRH in her novels. But the journalist Liz Jones defended her on the grounds that she gave hope to the always picked last for the team. Jones applauded the Duchess's attempts to make her own living instead of sponging off Andrew, and the way she faced her cancer diagnosis in January 2024. Not for her the gravitas of a solemn video. Instead, she appeared on ITV's Loose Women, doubtless encouraging women all over the country to get checked. She might be a bit posh, but she's also every woman, one of us. Paul Burrell, who worked for Princess Diana for many years, described the Duchess as strange, with a reputation of pimping her daughters in social situations. But he also thought her a survivor, which she had learned how to do by going to America. This farmer's daughter, said Burrell, was like a little girl brought into a sweet shop and told she could have anything she wanted. And she did. She had everything. Not just one thing, and she had the lot. Abused everything, and had everything she could possibly. Gorged herself. I saw it. I just have one word on the fact that she often does show generosity. I think the reality is that it's the rare person who never has a redeeming factor. And I do think that there was a part of her that felt genuine peace when she was helping others. I think it's because that's the way we've been created. There's a substantial weight lifted off of our souls when we're serving someone else. I think where people get tired of serving others is when it's a day in and day out thing. And so I think that sometimes we forget that there is a lot of pleasure in serving others. Without the burnout of service, it's easy to enjoy helping somebody else. But I think that there's something about the burnout of service that is when you are actually serving people. Because I think that when you go into a situation and you get to be the savior and the salvation of the moment, and you bring presents and you bring help and you bring aid and you bring love, it's very difficult to do that completely altruistically because you're receiving so much in the process. You're receiving love back from these people. You're receiving their praise and their adoration to you for being there to help them in their time of need. And in a lot of ways, it can be a very selfish thing to serve in these little blip moments. Not that what you're doing isn't very helpful, but I guess what I'm trying to say is for Sarah to go into a situation and genuinely show care and concern, the only way you're going to receive love back is if you're genuinely giving love in the first place. But because it seems that she would often start so many different charities, and she'd be going to so many different places, and there was no consistency of service in one area. It's difficult for me to assign those actions that she did as purely a sign that she had this huge heart towards the hurting and the needy, because to me, she got so much out of it. I think when we can really clock that somebody has a heart for charity and service is when you consistently see them going back into the same place where it can be dreary and where there can be friction and where the glow of your original appearance is no longer still there, where you are now just kind of part of the fabric of the institution and where you're going in day after day doing the same thing over and over. When you can still show up there, when you can still show love when your patience is short, when you're tired, when you're feeling burned out, when you can still show up and some days you don't get anything back, that's when I believe you have a heart for the work you're doing. Otherwise, it seems to me so transactional, and it seems to me just another way to get a high. It's a pretty positive way to get a high for sure, but it's just hard for me to necessarily label that as this great and generous spirit when I feel that there was just so much she got from it to sort of keep her going. Does that make sense? This next section is called The Royal Odd Couple. One of the most intriguing elements about the couple is the nature of their relationship. Separated since 1992 after 6 years of marriage, much of which they spent apart, they've continued to live together for much of the ensuing period and claim to be the happiest divorced couple in the world. The story, however, is not quite as simple as that. Introduced to each other in June 1985 by Princess Diana, they had a whirlwind romance, becoming engaged in February 1986 and marrying the following July. Sarah had despaired of ever marrying her live-in boyfriend, Paddy McNally. Andrew was under pressure from his family to settle down. Both families were surprised by the romance. Her father wondered if she was more attracted to the prince than the man, and she later admitted that within a week of the wedding, she realized it was a mistake. The Queen is reputed to have told Sarah, "I'm so glad you've taken Andrew off our hands. But why on earth did you do it?" Though the couple share an unsophisticated sense of humor, they have few mutual interests. He likes shooting and golf, and she prefers skiing and riding. And they're dissimilar characters. Almost immediately after the marriage, Andrew was either at sea or on a naval base far away. In 1990, he spent only 42 days at home. Sarah, insecure, in need of love and attention, became bored, depressed, and lonely, amid the pressures of court life and criticism from both the media and the palace. Andrew, focused on his own needs and exhausted by the demands of his career, admitted his priorities to his wife. "I'm a prince, then a naval officer, and then a husband." One of the journalists closest to Sarah, Ross Benson, felt she was desperate for his support. At a time when she was being criticized relentlessly by the press, the Duke failed to advise her or even to offer some comfort. Instead, he spent his leave slumped in front of a video. If he did stir himself, it was only to join his male friends for rounds of golf. Sarah took that as an insult, however unintended it was. I mean, she should have been offended. She should have been insulted. That's an insulting way to be treated as a wife. You can't spare to write me a letter. You can't come home. You choose to go other places when you could come home. I mean, she should have been insulted. That's ridiculous, sitting home all day watching videos or going to play golf with friends. Never a second glance towards me, your new wife. I mean, I don't blame her for being irate about it. I don't even blame her for eventually having an affair, which I'm not condoning, but I'm saying I understand it. It would be crushing to feel that you were unloved, crushing to feel that there was no way out, that love was not in the cards for you, that you'd married somebody who had zero desire to romance you whatsoever, that you could be a brand new bride and the luster had already rubbed off of you. He was already sick and tired of you, and he was not going to bother himself about you one way or the other. It would be crushing. It would be so painful. As Sarah told Madame Vasso, "He's just not strong enough. He really isn't. He doesn't stand up for me when I need support, and he's never there when I need him." A mutual friend remembered, Andrew's idea of a good time on a beautiful sunny day was to sit in the house and watch golf on the television. His dinner would be placed in front of him so that he could continue watching TV, and then he would go to bed. It got to the stage where Sarah would make an excuse not to be with her husband in the house. She would ask if the Duke was in for dinner, and if he was going to be, she would make sure that she was out. Initially, she tried very hard to save the marriage. All the compromising came from her side, probably because at the start she was so thrilled and grateful at the status and privileges this marriage had conferred on her, argued Benson. But eventually, she saw it for what it was. A tiresome, thankless exercise for someone born and molded to believe that such attentiveness from those around him was his birthright. Sarah tried to raise the state of her marriage with the Queen, but the latter found it uncomfortable to become involved in other people's emotional problems, and the talk was quickly deflected to dogs, horses, or the weather. It was only a matter of time before the Duchess found the excitement and affection she craved with other men. Fergie has a lot of regrets about a lot of things, but freeing herself of Andrew, I don't think that was one of them, said an old friend of the Duchess, who blamed the prince's serious attitude problem for the difficulties in the marriage. Ingrid Stewart, who wrote an authorized biography of the Duchess, was told by friends of the couple how, at times, she can't stand Andrew. She thinks he's a bit of an oaf, a bit of a cringe-maker. He can really embarrass her. And at other times, Sarah would say, Andrew's my best friend. He's a puppet, but sometimes he's a dull puppet. It was a strange relationship, as a family friend told the journalist Richard Kay. Sarah has been by far the stronger of the two, almost a Mother Madonna figure to him, especially as his father is a bully and his mother hates confrontation. Nothing was ever Sarah's fault, whatever the problem. He lived in denial of her infidelities. He's leaned on her for years, even when she found his apparent weakness a sexual turnoff. But in spite of their differences and problems, the two need each other. As one friend remarked, Andrew's nothing without a woman. He's sweet, but also rather clunky and gauche. He needs someone who knows what she wants and who can navigate his life for him. Andrew, guilty about his initial neglect of his ex-wife, remained loyal and supportive even when Sarah publicly cuckolded him and humiliated him in the royal family, not least when she was caught by the fake sheik selling access to him. In turn, after Andrew's fall from grace, Sarah has proved to be his most loyal supporter. The timings were never right for reconciliation. Andrew at first, after the separation and divorce, remained half in love with her, realizing his freedom to enjoy a series of casual sexual flings while still retaining the security of a parent married life. He's a charmer, but most of the romances fizzle out, and that's why he's kept the stability of being close to Sarah, says one friend. He has the family side and the playboy side, and he's been able to balance the two for decades. But it left Sarah confused. As she told Madame Vasso, he says he wants me back, and then he goes off with the girls. The Duchess equally appreciated the attention of various lovers and escape from the constrictions of royal life, while also enjoying the status and trappings that royal life brought. You have to understand that Andrew still loves Sarah, a friend of the couple told Vanity Fair, highlighting their fluctuating relationship. Amid talk of remarriage, with her career in America going strong, and with her Weight Watchers contract, her books, she could reject the possibility. She thought her career would continue to support her expensive lifestyle, and she didn't want to give all that up to become a boring royal again. But after Sarah's U.S. career nosedived, it was Andrew who didn't want to remarry, telling the friend, given Sarah's weaknesses, she wouldn't make an appropriate royal anymore. He's one to talk. The Duke also acted for the sake of his daughters, not wanting to cause a commotion at Buckingham Palace. Andrew accepted his wife's infidelities and often would dine alone off a tray in his study while Sarah and one of her lovers ate together elsewhere in the house. Sarah, however, was jealous of any of Andrew's girlfriends. She wanted to remain the one, with all the perks that brought, and girlfriends were invariably dispatched through a mixture of charm and ruthlessness. In this, she often had the support of her mother-in-law, according to a senior royal aide. It used to be a bit of a joke that whenever Andrew chose too close an interest in girls like Amanda Staveley or Angie Everhard, the Queen promptly issued an invitation to Fergie for afternoon tea at Windsor. As over the years, Sarah moved in and out of Andrew's homes, the speculation about the nature of the relationship and possibility of her marriage continued unabated, a speculation they did not discourage. In November 1998, the Daily Mail reported that over dinner in Highgrove, Andrew had told guests that he and Sarah might remarry. The following October, The Sun claimed, Fergie told last night how she could yet remarry Prince Andrew and longed to have another child. 2 days later, the paper admitted the Duke has ruled out ever remarrying his ex-wife Fergie. On May 4, 2000, the Mirror's front page headline was, I may wed Sarah again. After a 12-page Tatler interview, We Are Family, the Duke revealed, I don't rule remarriage out, and I certainly don't rule it in. On June 25th, under the headline, The Yorks, back as man and wife, the Sunday Telegraph claimed, That magic which they first shared is back. They're very happy, very comfortable in each other's company. 6 months later, Sarah was telling the Daily Express, "We still live together, but there's no chance, of course, of any romantic reconciliation between us." In August 2013, the Telegraph reported the couple might remarry. "Mark my words, they will remarry," says one pal. "It's only a matter of time." Richard Kay described the speculation about the nature of their relationship as part game to keep the puzzled observer guessing and part unbreakable bond that has withstood scandal, adultery, and embarrassing financial catastrophe. Though they have long been divorced, the couple continue to enjoy a tight bond, which first revolved around joint parenting of their daughters and has now been cemented by their role as grandparents. In spite of the problems in their marriage, they remain soulmates. As Sarah put it in one of her memoirs, "Andrew and I will not remarry precisely because we like where we are now. Our relationship suits us as it is. The marriage was the marriage and that's over. But ours is the wedding of the souls, and we've never parted and never shall." I think they just have trauma bonded, honestly. I mean, I think that both of them have made such devastating life choices. The only other person willing to accept them at this point is the other one who's done equal damage. It's like, how can they turn on each other when they're cut out of the same cloth? They really, really are. I feel like they're sides of the same coin, They're very self-destructive, but in different ways. And in a lot of similar ways as well. Okay, this chapter is called A Problem Such as Andrew. The question remains, what does one do with a problem such as Andrew? A.N. Nelson, writing in the Times, thought going abroad was not the solution. "The Duke of York must be grounded in Britain," he declared. "His minder and only friend, his ex-wife, will have to be paid by the king, out of his own pocket, to keep Andrew safely playing golf and trotting around the parks on one of the late Queen's horses and going for walks with her corgis. Such a system of containment and good propaganda could ensure Andrew's greed and his sense of entitlement are made to seem an aberration rather than a family trait. Even if Andrew fades from public view, it's difficult to believe that the story will die. Even though most of those who could speak are too loyal or deferential, have signed NDAs, been paid off, or may have much to lose themselves if they go public, there's always a chance of old depositions being released, new court cases being brought, fresh witnesses coming forward to fill in the pieces of the jigsaw. Buckingham Palace has tried hard to suppress the story, not least the pressure put on ABC not to run its interview with Virginia Giuffre all those years ago. The British government has so far failed to release any significant information about Andrew's time as a taxpayer-funded special representative in spite of numerous Freedom of Information requests. And neither the Duke nor Duchess has ever fully addressed the criticisms directed against them, notably the monies paid by Salman Turk and Johnny Hahn. According to journalist Omid Scobie, a former Buckingham Palace staff member who worked with the Duke of York claimed that many inside and close to the firm spent at least 4 years actively nudging trusted or easily influenced members of the press away from the negative Andrew stories, claiming that those who could be convinced it wasn't worth dealing with all the legal issues were helped in other ways. That sounds about right. He added, "There are believed to be dozens, if not hundreds, more unwise connections to cover from Andrew's years in the role." Andrew continues to live with his ex-wife at Royal Lodge as the building falls apart around him. A member of his staff interviewed for this book is saddened by the situation. He notes that many full-time staff are now part-time or have been let go, and the once stunning property is now a crumbling ruin with cracks in the walls and one of the loos. In the kitchen, there was water dripping down from the sink onto the floor. It's a total mess. The staffer continues about his former boss. He's a man with self-destructive habits that hamper his enjoyment of life. He's his own worst enemy. Unlike many famous people who act strange for amusement, he doesn't. Simply put, he's a complex, rather strange grown-up man. He instances Andrew's daily habit of 20-minute air showers, where he sits by an open window or on a back balcony, closes his eyes and sucks in fresh air, regardless of the temperature outside. He highlights the Duke's insomnia. I don't think Andrew slept through an entire night since he was a teenager, and how he's the consummate paranoid prince, thinking everyone and their uncle is out to get him. Andrew's health is not good, occasioned by recent stress making him look much older than his real age. He's no longer the youthful, charismatic prince that we recall from the 80s and 90s. Remember, the most difficult thing for the Duke of York was not the allegations of sexual misconduct. It was being stripped of his royal titles and losing his key role with the royal family. He's never gotten over this. According to the staff member, Andrew tries to live in denial, pretending that everything is good when he subconsciously knows that things are really bad. He spends his time riding, playing golf, and reading, usually thrillers. His favorite book is The Talented Mr. Ripley. Aside from that, he has become obsessed with aviation and watches endless videos of planes taking off and landing on a giant screen, talking on his mobile for hours on end. Young, attractive massage therapists regularly visit the house to help him heal, where in one of the guest bedrooms they work to the sound of country music. Andrew loves country music. Ian Halperin, in the course of researching his book and documentary on Jeffrey Epstein, talked to many people in Andrew's circle and confirmed Epstein sold Prince Andrew's most intimate secrets to several notorious foreign intelligence agencies, including Israel's Mossad, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the National Intelligence Service of Libya under the rule of Muammar Gaddafi. In mid-2007, Halperin interviewed Epstein, who described Andrew as like a brother to me, but he has two dual personalities. I never met anyone like him. On one hand, he's Prince Charming, and on the other hand, he has the dirtiest mind I've ever seen. I feel bad for him. He's tormented. When the journalist asked Epstein if he was serious, he replied, I'm as serious as a heart attack. It was Prince Andrew's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and Virginia Giuffre that was instrumental in his fall from grace. Far more than press criticisms of his role as special representative, his financial scandals, or his abuse of taxpayers' money. It's clear how Epstein played Andrew. The prince was a useful idiot who gave him respectability and access to political leaders and business opportunities. What drew Andrew to Epstein? An opportunity to join the super rich in a lifestyle to which the Duke had long aspired, a supply of available women, a chance to make money himself, and somebody who would bankroll his life as well as settle his ex-wife's debts. Both men, ostensible friends, used each other, but it was an unequal relationship. According to one of Prince Andrew's friends, Epstein to Andrew was like putting a rattlesnake in an aquarium with a mouse. Much is at stake with this story. What would be the consequence for the monarchy if the full extent of the Yorks' involvement with Jeffrey Epstein emerged? According to one former Buckingham Palace employee, they'd be toast. They'd never be able to bounce back from it. They've endured more than their share of scandals over the years. But one thing would bury them for good. I'm still in contact with many people who work at Buckingham Palace, and they refuse to broach the subject of Andrew. It's too sensitive. Nothing good can come from it. If the unconditional truth is ever realized, I think the British public would try to impeach the royal family, because a lot of Andrew's wrongdoings were done on the British taxpayers' tab. Janice, a Frenchwoman, told author Ian Halperin, I just want to confirm with you, Ian, that I was one of the many girls Prince Andrew had sex with in Jeffrey Epstein's house. I was paid off to keep quiet years ago by Epstein. I was drunk at Epstein's house on his private island when Andrew threw himself on me. And to this day I can't believe how Prince Andrew has never been investigated or held accountable. One day the entire truth will come out. Now is not the time because Andrew seems to be above the law. I promise the final chapter of this sad saga is far from being written. Indeed, the story continues to run, most notably with the suicide of Virginia Giuffre, age 41, in April 2025. Just one of Epstein's many victims who have taken their own lives. Although she was thankful that Ghislaine Maxwell, whom she regarded as more evil than Epstein, was convicted, Giuffre has never felt closure. It's definitely not over. There are so many more people involved with this, it just doesn't stop with Maxwell. Indeed, much may still emerge, not least if the FBI files on Epstein are released, not just about Andrew's sexual antics, but also the business activities of the couple. The media have now woken up to the way they have both leveraged their royal positions for personal gain, and it is likely that there are many more scandals to be exposed. It is ironic that the Duke and Duchess of York, ostensibly the strongest defenders of the monarchy, may through their behavior between them have done most to hasten its demise. We're done. I really can't imagine reading a book that's more explosive than the one that we just finished. And the ending sentiment being, what you've just read is just a scrape on the top of the surface of reality. I'm floored. I'm floored that when you consider all the NDAs, all the paid for silence, all the people who have just had to be threatened to keep their mouths shut, that with all of that combined, this was still the amount of stuff that Andrew Lani was able to find and to publish. 3,000 people were interviewed. 300 would talk. And I just think that the amount of information that has fallen into the hands of the public, being barely a scrape of the truth, and it's this shocking. What would we do if we knew the whole facts? But they will come out. And I think when we read a book like this, one of the first temptations is to feel despair. One of the best uses of this kind of stuff for the devil is to get into your head and make you believe that it's hopeless, that the evil and that the filthy minded will always run the show, that good will not prosper, that it cannot prosper, that somehow evil is stronger than good. For some reason, we're able to believe the strength of evil in a way that we are unable to believe the strength of good. For some reason, the glare of evil is so much brighter to us than the number of good things we see throughout a day. And I really just think that it's the twist of the world. It's the twist of the broken world we live in. It's the same concept as when somebody says something really mean to you, you believe that. And when somebody says something overwhelmingly kind to you, your immediate reaction is, well, that can't be true. Or if this person really knew, you know? There's something about evil that makes us believe its strength is far greater than the strength of good. So the temptation after reading a book like this is to believe that despair is reality and that despair is the right place to be at because that feels real. Whereas hope that anything could ever change is kind of like a little pathetic, you know? It's a little bit silly and childish, a little overly optimistic to believe that good conquers all, you know? How could it when these fools have been allowed to live, reign, and rule? But one of the things that I think we really, truly do have to focus on, even though the noise of evil is so loud after having read a book like this, is the fact that the people who live lives like this are sowing seeds constantly of evil. And the only thing that can come from a seed of evil is a tree of evil that will bear evil fruit. And they're the ones who are going to have to eat it. And I think one of the things, too, is that Andrew and Sarah have never been happy people. They have been able to constantly look for the next thing that will give them the next high, the next dopamine hit. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they've been happy people. In fact, I would say it's indisputable that they've been miserable their whole lives. So even all along the way, as they've been living these hedonistic lifestyles where the word no is not in their vocabulary, the word honor is not in their vocabulary, the word responsibility doesn't even ring a bell. It's easy to believe that these people who are living these just absolutely no breaks, full throttle, wild lives are somehow achieving something even in their debauchery, that they're getting something out of this. And in a small sense they are, if you want to say that being addicted to these dopamine hits is somehow a life, but it isn't. It's the life of a slave. These people are enslaved to the things that they're doing. They're enslaved, in Andrew's case, to women and to sex, and to that momentary high of a connection, of a human connection, even as twisted and debauched as it is. And Sarah is addicted to people-pleasing, to finding people who she will assume will buy into her for a little while, but even when she gets real friends, if they ever question her judgment, she quickly throws them away because all she needs is just to feel that you accept her in the moment. And as soon as you say, but Sarah, she's no use for you. You know, but what a lonely way it is to live in the world when the people who are around you, who stick around you, are only there because they can get something out of you, and it's not really a true friendship. Both of them have been miserable their whole lives because they're slaves. And it's a freeman's choice to fight. If you're enslaved to something, if you're enslaved to your lifestyle, enslaved to a sin, enslaved to a temptation, you don't have the ability to fight. You don't even have the right to fight anymore because you've given that up when you became enslaved to this addiction that you have. And it is the free person's right to fight. And it is hard to say no to the things we want to do. It is hard to fight every day the desire, I want to do this thing, but I know it's not good for me. To stand against that is your free right. Having a soul created in God's image is your right to fight against the temptations that would debase you and make your life worthless and you miserable. But it's so much easier sometimes to just go for that quick dopamine hit, the quick fix that's going to make you feel like everything's fine, that all this pain that's roaring in your ears constantly could go away in 5 minutes if I just give in to this, if I just say yes to that, if I don't fight this anymore, I don't want to fight anymore, I just want to give in to this, that, the other, the thing that just makes all the noise quiet. And when you've learned which addiction will quiet the noise fastest, to choose to fight seems like a crazy thing. Why would I do that when I could just give in to this thing that will quiet the noise, lull my soul to sleep, and then I can just get through life? And it seems that Sarah and Andrew preferred slavery to being a free person. And that's why in a lot of ways my heart goes out to them, because the temptation to read a book like this is to be despondent, thinking evil has won. How has it? They're miserable even on their journey to seeing this tree of evil that they've planted grow fruit. They've never been happy people. And now the tree is grown and the tree is bearing fruit, and they're losing reputations, and they're losing the use of titles, and they're losing prestige and connections. They're losing any kind of respectability they were able to cultivate along the way. And when the Bible tells us that be sure your sins will find you out, it's not a suggestion that maybe kind of, I hope, cross your fingers, the elite who have used and abused people for years might maybe have to pay for their crimes. They will. They will. Be sure your sins will find you out is a promise, not a suggestion. So as I'm reading this book, the reality of reading a book that is cataloging even a 100th of what they've been up to, and it's shocking all of us, is the reality that I can believe the Bible when it says your sins will find you out. I can believe that evil does not prosper. I can believe by the mere fact that I'm reading a book that catalogs even just a tiny bit of what's going on, that evil does not prosper. And as I read about these wretched lives that these people are leading, the entire time, this never paid. Even if on paper you could say they got what they wanted, how are you getting what you want when you're miserable? How are you getting what you want when your bank account is full of cash, but you don't have any idea how to maintain, manage yourself, create a legacy for your family? How are you happy when you're having to lie, in Sarah's case, about what a great mother you are, when you're staking your entire identity on a claim that in reality people can document as not having been factual? Yes, the thing I'm most proud about is that I'm a great mother, but nobody knows what she's talking about. And so she's staking even the one thing that she tries to say she's most proud about on a lie. How can you be happy with your life? Evil does not prosper. Do not fall for the temptation of despair at the end of a book like this. Do not fall into the idea that because an institution has been wrecked by foolishness, that it has to always have the identity of being a fraudulent institution. I think the monarchy is going to be in crisis post this book and post the existence of Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. I think that there is an enormous weight that's being placed on the monarchy to answer for itself. I think there's an enormous weight being placed on the monarchy to be as transparent as the people need them to be in order for their reputation to withstand the damage that Andrew and Sarah have done. Having read this book and seeing the way the palace does manage the stories surrounding the royal family and how they will offer certain aids to those reporters who will not report on bad stories. Certainly we saw with the Amy Robach footage that they said if you publish stuff about Andrew, we will refrain from giving you access to William and Kate. If that's the case, then it makes sense to me why Harry and Meghan felt that they were in a fraudulent relationship with the palace. Having read this book, it makes a lot more sense to me now why Harry felt like he wanted to get out and make his own name for himself. And had he done that in a way that was respectable, had he decided, I don't want to be a working royal anymore, so I renounce the title of Prince, His Royal Highness, or anything related to the palace, if he had said, I want to go out and stand on my own 2 feet because I don't like what I'm seeing at the palace, having read this book, I fully support his desire to want to go out and make his own name on his own 2 feet. Unfortunately, he's never done that. So I understand, having read this book, the sense that he wanted to disconnect himself from what felt like a fraudulent organization if what he'd seen was the protection of Prince Andrew his whole life. If what he'd seen was Sarah Ferguson manipulating the use of the monarchy for her benefit, I can understand why he would say, hey, you all have supported these two these many years and covered for them when there was absolute insanity and illegal activity going on, and nary a word was spoken. What kind of a person would want to stay attached to an institution like that if you had an option to get out? And since he's not really in line for the throne anymore, I mean, a whole lot of damage would have to be done to the family for him to find his way to the throne. It makes, in retrospect, perfect sense to me that he would want to go out and stand on his own 2 feet. But again, he left without a plan on how to do that. But his motivation seems a lot more acceptable to me now, having read this book, than it did originally. I still think he's the king of Clowntown, but at least he got one thing right. I don't want to be associated with this fraudulent mess. Unfortunately, he just hitched his star to an even greater mess. But yeah, I think all of us have had a huge perspective shift having read this book. And I am interested to read the paperback and the additional items. One final word. As most of you know, if you saw the Friday News Roundup, I talk about Virginia Gouvray's book, Nobody's Girl. I was reading it last night and for a very long time, and really just went to bed with such a heavy heart. It's probably one of the darkest books I've ever read. And like I said in the Friday News Roundup, I'm not going to read that book on this channel just because I think that the content is far too dark for this channel. And reading that book for a month straight, I think, would just be more than I could handle. I mean, just even reading it by myself alone, with nobody around, I just could hardly handle it. It was just so devastating to hear about the abuse that she suffered from the age of 7 on. Such a hard book to read. But at the same time, I'm so grateful to that book and for the highlight that she has been willing to put. If she had not come forward, I don't think that Andrew would have even been held account for all the other things that he did. The wasting the taxpayers' money, using his position in a fraudulent way. There's something about the abuse of a young girl that just completely lit up people's consciences in a way that the stealing of money and stuff just didn't, because we're used to that story. People in the elite taking advantage, hiding money, using money in fraudulent ways. It's like, yeah, the story is old as time. But when you start hurting kids or young children or young girls, when you start abusing your power to twist somebody up in their most sacred space, the space of their sexuality, when you start messing with people on a soul level like that, then people start getting mad. There's something in our hearts that understand that if you fool with somebody in a sexual way, you're warping who they are as a human being. And that's far different than you stealing money out of a bank account. I mean, money is money, whatever. It's not great, but, okay, you didn't twist my soul. You didn't manipulate my mind to hate myself for an action. You did, And so I'm so proud of Virginia after reading this book and just seeing what she had overcome in order to come out and speak when so many people were not willing to do it. I mean, it's just an incredible book. If you can stomach it, it's incredible. Of course, we are going to talk about the book in its full context in another episode, but it's a really hard read. Let me just tell you, it is a hard read. And if you have anything in your past where you have been hurt and abused, I would caution you strenuously not to read it. But if you have, but you know where you're at, so you know what you can and can't handle. But the book's incredible. It's unbelievable. And I'm so grateful that somebody came up and spoke. Andrew has to pay for what he's done. And so do all the other people who are involved. And in my mind, this is really just the beginning of the scandal. It seemed like it's dragged on for years and years, but I feel like all of that was just cracks and fissures, and it's going to be an explosion. And I feel like it's going to be an explosion very soon. Thank you guys so much for who stayed with me this entire read. I think it was one of our best, but it was made even better by all of y'all. So thanks so much. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.